Welcome to the St. Thomas More Lynchburg's Homily Podcast. We join Father John Christian as he brings his insight and application to the readings for the 22nd Sunday in Ordinary Time.
We as human beings often strive to see the patterns in things. We often strive to bring order out of what it is that we observe and what it is that besets us and all that we kind of see and experience in the world. God gave us will and intellect, and for the most part, there are things that are intelligible to us. God communicated himself to us, thereby making himself intelligible to us. But there are things around which we cannot wrap our reason because they are too hideous and odious to behold. We think of, for instance, of course, the tragedy that we have experienced and witnessed just this past week with the death of those two young children at the Church of the Annunciation, Fletcher Merkel and Harper Moisky, 8 and 10 years old. Something truly, truly wretched and its evilness. And so we as people of faith are faced with something like that and look at it and do indeed find it to be unreasonable, to find it to be hateful, to find it to be nothing less than evil. And so how do we even begin to, again, think about it? Why would somebody do that? We would ask. But again, there is no reasonableness to evil. And so we look at the lives of these two young children that we can call martyrs, for they were killed out of hatred for the faith. And that in and of itself is something unreasonable. Our Lord, when he said he saw Satan fall like lightning from the sky, we think of how Satan, a being of pure spirit, who was with God, made by God, but yet rebelled against God and was cast out of heaven. That's an act of ultimate irrationality, right? How could a being of pure spirit who was made by God and there with God rebel against him? It doesn't make sense. It's evil. And so evil is irrational. And so again, we ask ourselves, well, how do we even think about this as people of faith? And we do, as we always do as disciples of Christ, we look to his words. And it's kind of interesting that the words he shares with us on this weekend are things that seemingly aren't related, but yet they do speak to us as to how to be Christians and how to face the travails of the world. And those two things are, of course, humility and hospitality. Humility often gets misconstrued and is viewed or presented as mere self-deprecation just for the sake of itself. Some kind of, oh, I'm lowly and unworthy and all that sort of thing. But what humility really is it's a realistic appraisal. If we consider its root word, humus, right? That Latin word for earth or dirt. And so it means ground, not necessarily in the sense of low and lowly, but rather in the sense of grounded, and the sense of being realistic. And so the humble Christian then has a sense of reality and accepts it as it is, has a realistic appraisal of himself or herself, has a realistic appraisal of his or her relationship with God or his or her relationship with her fellow man. For it's in humility that we are able to begin to see clearly and accept things as they are. And part of things as they are is the real existence of evil. In Christian hospitality, we're called to seek the good in everyone and to strive to see it. But there does come a reality that, in point of fact, there are some people who are bad. There is evil in the world. And again, it is irrational. The person who perpetrated these horrible actions was somebody who himself was at war with reality. And so it makes it all the more tragic to behold. And so then as Christians, in our humility and our acceptance of the reality of a fallen world that sees so much pain and agony, right? We've seen this invasion of another country. We've seen the Holy Land rip itself apart now for going on uncounted months. We've seen the wholesale sacrifice of innocents in the womb. It's been one thing after another. We've seen Cain and Abel, that blood of Abel, as St. Paul mentioned in our second reading. This is something that has been with us since the fall, these acts of irrational evil. And so we as human beings then, in our Christian humility, recognize that, well, we don't save the world. We have to turn to our Lord Jesus Christ. We have to turn to He who is the font of all love and mercy. Turn to His sacred side, pierced by that lance, out of which gushed water and blood for the salvation of all the world. Our Lord, in His love for us, came to be amongst us, took on the entirety of our human condition, and poured forth His divine mercy and that great act of self-giving and love. That's what we as Christians have to avail ourselves of. We have to turn to that. We have to accept His grace, and we have to accept His mercy. For it's in His mercy that this world is saved. He and He alone. And so as Christians then, we are called to action, and that action is prayer. Our Lord Himself commands us throughout the Scriptures to pray unceasingly. And in the light of this tragedy, you've probably seen all those other horrendous, wretched sound bites that are not worth repeating about the opinion of some less than informed politicians on prayer and what it is. But things like, well, prayer is not enough. Well, they've made prayer into merely a thought. And that is not enough. Prayer is something infinitely more. Prayer is an act of Christian charity. Prayer is the lifting up of our hearts and minds in communion with God for the sake of ourselves and our neighbors and anything else. Prayer is our relationship with God. And so to that foolish sentiment that would say prayer is not enough, I would argue that it's inverted. There is not enough prayer. We as Christians are called to persevere in prayer, to be courageous in prayer, and to not shirk from our duty to Christian prayer. For that is how we lift up this world to the Lord our God and offer it up in His divine mercy, to His providence, to His solicitation, to His care. We're called to bring ourselves and all of our brothers and sisters to God in prayer. It is the single most effective thing we can do as people of faith, to pray unceasingly for the sanctification of the world, to pray unceasingly for each other, to pray unceasingly for ourselves. For this is how we turn to that divine mercy that pours forth from that sacred and pierced side, that heart of our Lord Jesus Christ. This is what we're called to in the face of all that is so tragic and painful and hateful, is to turn to our Lord and to turn to Him in prayer. For it is He and He alone who saves the world. He is the source of our being. He is our ultimate sustenance. He is everything to us. He is God, the Creator. He made us. He made the world we inhabit. And so we are called to turn to Him in all things and to truly pray unceasingly.
Thank you for tuning in to the St. Thomas More Lynchburg's Homily Podcast. For the daily reading and to learn more about the community of St. Thomas More, please visit our website at www.stmva.org. If you were blessed by our podcast today, please give it a like, a kind review, and share it with a friend. God bless.